So what's in it for the likes of us? Consumer benefits, of course, the global optics of it all. Let's break it down. Joining me in the studio, Siddharth Zarabi, our group editor of Business Today, freshly back from Davos. Welcome, Siddharth. We have Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, Jayant Krishna, former CEO, ED, and COO, NSDC, Prime Minister Scale India Mission. Welcome, all three of you. Thank you for joining us. And Siddharth, let's begin with you. If you break it down in terms of the brass tacks of it, what gets cheaper for the consumer? What can we look forward to? What's the give and take?
Well, there are significant possibilities there, and remember that this will take several more months to come into effect. Effectively, 2027, about the same time, is when we can see the true benefits and fruits of this new deal translate into actionable, like you put it, price reductions, and as I would like to say, greater availability, more choice for Indian consumers, especially at the top end. Automobiles has been one area under focus. There are multiple other items. In fact, the trade basket is very, very significant. And Preeti, what really is being done is that every economy has a certain set of goods and services that it can export. It is good at that. That's what we are getting access to the European market, and likewise the Europeans are getting access to the very large, in fact one of the single largest consumer markets in India, which has now been integrated into one tax framework for their goods and services. I just want to leave you with one ramification which will explain to you how significant this deal is, and I believe that this is the single most important trade deal and associated agreements that India has ever signed since 1991. I believe it is as epochal as that moment in our economic history. Bangladesh, for years, being a LDC, a lowest developed country, has enjoyed far greater exports access for its textiles products to the European Union because they got special and preferential treatment on account of their economic status, not just because their products were much better than theirs. Right. Today, Indian textile makers are now at par. That disadvantage has been removed. So the potential consequential impact in economic terms will take many months to even understand, and there is, of course, a process that will be underway, but clearly one of the biggest deals ever in our economic history.
Well, I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to the cheaper cars, the cheaper blueberries, the cheaper cheese. Well, also there's a wine list there, which will be a lot more than what you see on the Indian market and a lot more cheaper. So lots to look forward to. But in terms of, diplomacy, in terms of optics, Rajiv Dogra, the optics that went out of the Hyderabad House, New Delhi today, especially which were beamed in the United States of America, would not have been taken so well. Good for us, but not so good for a select few.
Well, not so good for China also, because you remember when Ursula went to China a couple of months back, she was given a bus. When she came down from her aircraft, she was given a bus to travel in. And her welcome in China was minimal. Compared to that, look at the buggy ride. Look at the way there was a Minister of State to accompany her to all the meetings and all the appointments. So she and naturally Mr. Costa were made much of, and that is perhaps one reason why this deal, which did not seem possible at one moment before their arrival, materialized. Now, as you said very rightly, there are messages being conveyed, and the principal message is to the one who's occupying the White House. I don't know whether he's given something on Twitter or one of his own Truth Social.
Not yet.
Not yet, but sometime around the midnight American time, he'll get up from the bed and say that I have to respond to these people. Now, whatever it is, in one way, the glass is half full already because of the atmospherics of the agreement. The other thing is that we have a lot to look forward to in terms of targets, because EU-US, EU-China trade is about $800 billion. EU-ASEAN trade is $300 billion. Ours is just about $130 billion, part of it because of our oil exports to EU. but the reality is more sobering. So we have targets which should be possible, maybe not in astronomical terms of 300 and 800 billion dollars, but much more than the modest trade that we have with 27 countries of EU. The other thing is that, you know, the between the EU and India, we represent roughly around 25% of the global population and
Fair point.
22% of the global GDP. So it is not as if it's a small agreement. The last point I want to emphasize here is that after free trade agreement with Australia and UAE, you now have a major agreement with a large group of substantial countries in the world. And that
Fair
is the
point, sir.
big step forward.
The big step forward, takeaway. Well, the deal in itself, Jayant Krishna, how do you look at it? I'll give you the last word.
So I think it's very, everybody has called it the mother of all deals. It gives market access to for 27 European countries, which are a part of EU and India put together. It's almost market access for 2 billion people, right? And let's not forget, that 25% of global GDP and one third of global trade is what the total transaction value of trade between India and European Union is. 17% of all Indian exports are done to the European Union, and almost 9 to 10% of overall European Union exports are to India. So I think it's very, very important. And let's also understand that European Union, like the US, is one group of countries where India has a trade surplus in its favor. So I see it as very, very important because, while India and European Union have been strategic partners from 2004 onwards, but not much has happened on the ground, to convert that into concrete action. And to that extent, although it kicks off only later this year or perhaps early next year, after a lot of formalities have to happen. But, the contours have been agreed. So I think, but one thing which people confuse that I don't think for common man, I don't think the prices are going to fall, because the kind of European cars which are imported in India right now, or which are manufactured here, there's a very, very niche segment which buys that. And even the
Okay.
wines and spirits and so on and so forth, which have had 150% duty, I think it will come down. But again, it caters to a certain segment of the market. So I think but I think there are a lot of the overall investment ties between European Union and India will deepen. The supply chains will get deepened, and lots of sectors like manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, clean energy, technology services, textiles, gems and jewelry, leather, electrical machines. I think they are all these product categories where a lot of change is bound to happen. So I'm very, very hopeful that it will be good. And as the other colleague in the panel said, that the message to be it remains to be seen that how US and the President Trump would see this development.
Right. Well, we'll know soon. Ambassador Dogra said, maybe a couple of hours. Thank you, all three gentlemen, for joining us. We're going to leave it at that.